Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this Mr. Pandaria raiding guide. And in this video we're going to be taking a look at the heroic mode version of the Council of Elders in the Throne of Thunder raid. Now in order to complete this fight you're going to want to bring 2 tanks, 2 to 3 healers depending on how strong your healing composition is, and the remaining a mixture of both ranged and melee DPS. Now this fight does prove a little bit of a challenge. I think we killed it 6th on our list, so this is why this guide is coming a little bit later, even though it is the 3rd encounter in the Throne of Thunder. But nevertheless, once you get to grips with some of the new abilities and how to manage them, it should be a clean kill. Now the actual majority of this fight is pretty much the same as normal mode, with the addition of some new abilities. So you're still going to fight the 4 different Troll Kings, and you're also going to have Gara'jal interfering and sticking his nose in, which is what you don't want him to do. He's a little bit of a bee in your bonnet, if we're going to put it politely. So all of the abilities that were in normal mode have been moved across to the heroic mode version of this fight, so it's advisable that you do have a good understanding of the normal mode version of this fight. There is a guide available on my channel if you do need to catch up or recap on some of the abilities. So for this guide, because each of the 4 different troll lords, kings, whatever they are, has gained a new ability, and there's another one on top of that, I'm just going to look at each different one individually and how to actually deal with that different troll lord. The kill order for this fight is pretty much the same as normal mode. At the start you will want to pop all your cooldowns in order to nuke Saul the Sandcrawler and kill him off first, just because he's the biggest pain in the arse. Then once you've killed Saul the Sandcrawler, you're going to want to look to kill either Frost King Malik or High Priestess Malik. Then the third one will obviously be whichever of those 2 you didn't kill, and then the final boss you'll want to look to kill off Kaz Rajan. Again, just like in normal mode, these bosses do not share a health pool, they all have their own individual health pools, and you will still need to be aware of the dark energy bar that they have. And since this is heroic mode, the increasing damage that it will deal to you if you do not knock the Spirit of gara'jal out of the troll will be a hell of a lot higher, since this is a heroic mode fight. So the first ability that we're going to take a look at is related to gara'jal the Spirit Binder, unfortunately, and this ability is probably one of the abilities that does make this a heroic mode fight. It's one of the probably easiest to deal with, but it's what's going to make the fight a little bit more challenging for you. So this ability is called Soul Fragment, and every time that the Spirit of gara'jal is forced out of a counsellor, he will leave behind what's called a Soul Fragment. Now in order to force him out of a counsellor, you need to deal 25% of that council member's health in damage, just like in the normal mode. Now the Soul Fragments will possess a random player in the raid, and they will inflict 55,000 shadow damage every 5 seconds to that player until it is passed on to another player. So as you can see on my screen right now, I've gained an extra ability button. This is what I'll use in order to pass this debuff on to another player. Now every time the Soul Fragment deals damage to you, so every 5 seconds, it'll also apply a stack of shadowed soul to you, and this will increase all the damage that you take by 3% for the remainder of the fight, and this is also a stacking debuff on you. So obviously this is where, your healers start to hate you, because you're going to be taking a lot more damage. Now we found it was best at the start of the fight to only take this to 10 stacks, and by the time everybody had taken 10 stacks, including the tank, we were just about ready to kill off the boss. You can also use classes such as Warlocks to your ability, or classes that have really good damage reducing cooldowns, because obviously they can take higher stacks. I think for our original kill, the Warlock managed to take like 25 stacks or something along those lines. It was a bit crazy, so he was obviously taking a hell of a lot of damage. But yeah, you want to look to try and get the most out of players' classes. So for example, a rogue could probably smoke bomb and reduce the damage that he takes in order to take higher stacks. It's just something you've got to look at and see what classes' abilities are available to you. In order to pass this debuff on when you've reached your required amount of stacks, all you have to do is click on another player and then click on your extra ability button, and it will pass the debuff on to them. You'll obviously want to communicate with other people, find out who's had the debuff, who who still needs it and see how many stacks people have before you do actually pass it on. So now we're going to move on to take a look at the counsellors, and the first one that we're actually going to take a look at is Frost King Malik. Now he will gain a new ability which is called Body Heat, and this is to do with the Frostbite ability that he will place on players. Now the damage from Frostbite can still be split between players that do stack up, however the players that do stack up on top of the player that has Frostbite will gain a debuff called Body Heat, and this will start at 8 seconds and begin to tick down, so they will lose body heat over a period of 8 seconds. When body heat has expired, when it gets to 0 seconds, they will become what's called chilled, and they will no longer be able to contribute to the splitting of the frostbite damage. Now, we kind of struggled with this a little bit, but then we decided to cheese it and found it was a lot easier to actually have healers just spam heal the person that has frostbite on them and also use healing cooldowns on them, as opposed to actually have people stack in and then stack out and rotate people in and out in order to deal with this and reduce the damage, because you'd have to set up a rotation of 3 different groups of 2, I think it is, because frostbite lasts for around 24 seconds and body heat's 8 seconds, so it kind of works to cheese it by using cooldowns on the player. However, if you are going to do it the quote-unquote proper way, then you'll want to set up a rotation of 3 groups of 2 people that are going to move on top of the person with frostbite. However, it's obviously easier to just spam heal the person that has it and use cooldowns on them, because you don't know who's going to get it. That's the only problem. You can't make fixed groups, unfortunately. The next counsellor is Kaz Rajan, and he will gain a new ability when he is empowered, and also after he has cast his Reckless Charge ability. That's when he will create the line on the floor and charge through the raid. Now this ability is called Discharged, and what he will do is stun himself for 20 seconds, I think he does that in the normal mode as well, and he will also reflect 10% of all the damage that he takes back to everyone in the raid. So this is a very, very healing intensive kind of situation, and it's even going to be worse when you're having to, say, nuke him because he's suddenly started getting stacks of dark energy and dealing a lot more damage to the raid. You'll especially notice this damage near the end of the fight if Kaz Rajan is the last boss that you do kill, but at that point you are able to happily stack up and use raid-wide healing cooldowns. You can also coordinate the raid so that when you are attacking him, players kind of stack up so that they get AoE heals and can benefit from AoE healing and also raid cooldowns such as a priest bubble. They're really useful. You just have to coordinate. That's the main way to deal with Kaz Rajan in this fight. Next up we have got Saul the Sandcrawler, and we all know how fun that boss is. Now, just like in normal mode, you will be nuking Saul the Sandcrawler at the start of the fight to kill him off and get him out of the way. Now this is mainly to do with the abilities he already had, but also a new ability that he's going to gain in the heroic mode, which is called Treacherous Ground, and this will be active at all times. Now this is why your raiders actually need to spread out, because at any point during the raid, if any quick samples overlap, they will become a larger quick sample. They kind of combine into one. Now, you don't need to worry about this, but you do if you don't have the DPS requirements to avoid the sandstorm, because when he spawns the living sands from a larger pool, they will have their HP and damage buffed by 125% for each little quick sample that's been combined. So if 2 have been combined, then he's going to obviously be dealing 250% more damage and have 250% more health. That's the living sand, by the way, not the boss himself. So it's one of those, okay, we know the ability's there, but hopefully we're not going to get it because we're going to have good enough DPS to nuke him before he casts his first sandstorm. If you do have any of the buffed living sands spawning, then your tanks will just have to use a lot of cooldowns, and healers will also have to put cooldowns on them because the amount of damage they'll be dealing will just be ridiculously high, unfortunately. And finally, we're going to take a look at High Priestess Malik, who we feel has changed the most in the heroic mode version of this fight. Like, she will cause the most problems. Now, she gains a new ability called Twisted Fate, and she will only cast this ability when she has been possessed by the spirit of gara'jal. And what she will do is rip the soul from the 2 furthest away players, and she will link those souls together. Now, the soul that's the furthest away will begin to move towards the closest soul. So, for example, what we did is we had just our mage stand out of the group and everyone else stacked up on top of the boss we were nuking. And the furthest away soul that spawned on the mage would move towards the main group, just as an example of how the souls actually work. And back to the actual ability, the furthest away soul will begin to deal a shit ton, literally, of shadow damage to every player every 3 seconds. I think it's something ridiculous, like 300,000 shadow damage. However, luckily, the amount of damage that he deals every 3 seconds is massively reduced by the distance between the 2 souls, and this is also kind of dealable with, if that's proper English, I guess you could say, because druids can use abilities such as Typhoon, and any other knockback abilities can knock the spirit that's moving towards the group backwards, so you can obviously keep the damage lower for a longer period of time. Your raid will need to obviously swap to this spirit and kill it off as soon as possible. And when this first spirit dies, the second one will begin dealing a moderate amount of shadow damage to everyone in the raid every 3 seconds. It's best to stack up for this phase, obviously, minus the one person that's going to stand out of the raid so that the soul spawns on him, because there's going to be a lot of AoE healing needed. So, all in all, this fight is relatively difficult, to be fair. That's why we killed it later on. However, you will want to get it killed soonish, because it does drop tier gear, and obviously that's going to be beneficial for your 2-piece and your 4-piece bonuses. Although, you know, if you do looking for raid, you probably get them already, but that's a different story for a different day. The fight is obviously just about managing the abilities while making sure you're in the right place at the right time, and you're also spread out at the right time, or stacking up at the right time. It's just getting to grips with the fight. We managed to kill it in 3 hours worth of raiding, I think it was. It shouldn't really be that difficult, to be fair. I mean, what you could do obviously is drop a healer, take 2 healers, and have the extra DPS. That could help you massively. It means the spirits from Twisted Fate are going to die a lot faster. It means Saul the Sandcrawler is going to die a lot faster, so you've not got to worry about the sandstorm at all. And it also means, well, it means that you're obviously all going to be taking a lot more damage when you're on Kaz Rajan, but that's something for your healers to worry about. You don't need to worry about that as a DPS. You've got 1 less healer and 1 more DPS. Numbers are looking up on the charts, people. Be happy about that. So that's going to do it for this Mists of Pandaria raiding guide. I hope it helps you and gets you a nice little shiny kill with epic loot. And as always, thank you for watching, and if you are interested in future Mists of Pandaria kill videos, raiding guides or PTR preview videos, then please do feel free to subscribe to the channel.